Now you'll have plenty of money left over to go to the circus with the affordability of the Spin Master Bat. I can't believe they put that in the movie. I can't believe they didn't do a second take.
Do you like the circus?
Regardless, Spin Master is continuing their affordability trend going into 2025, tackling the Batman property and specifically the Batman movies. However, a brand new approach when it comes to, I guess, for a matter of speaking, the 30th anniversary of Batman Forever, the campy Joel Schumacher movie that even I grew up with. But I grew up with the movie and the replayability of the movie on VHS. I didn't necessarily grow up with the actual action figures that came out of that line. I legitimately can't remember what company, I want to say it was Kenner, that handled some of those very disproportionate and very, the term that a lot of kids like to say these days, kooky action figures they had back in the 90s. So to see a company like Spin Master pick up the license or pick up that approachability and tackle not only a distinct wave of separate little mini action figurines, but also a brand new take, a much more affordable take on the Batmobile from that movie, one that you can easily walk into the store and find it for, like I said, a very easy to swallow $20, as opposed to the competitors who like to charge somewhere between maybe 50 to 60 for something kind of mid-tier like the McFarlane version. You can see that they're tackling a retro version of that collection that's not part of the 85th anniversary that's tackling everything movie related. So this is kind of its own thing, and I imagine that maybe down the line they will tackle the Kilmer Batman with that much more less abrasive looking, less crazy looking version of Kilmer in a 4-inch format, because this is definitely not it. And we'll tackle that momentarily, but you can see the presentation values here at play with the box, which is in this very standard, completely enclosed box that's very reminiscent of that retro collection. It's got that collectability of being in box and kind of having those old-fashioned tendencies from back in the Kenner days, maybe even Toy Biz on the Marvel side. So I do like that aesthetic, but like I said, I kind of missed it somewhat because back then it was all about the Power Rangers, maybe a couple of Spidey toys, a few Marvel toys, but I don't know. I was just so focused on Transformers and Power Rangers because of that whole transforming factor. So seeing this as an adult, I'm like, all right, I dig the aesthetic. I dig the use of black, green, and yellow. I like the art style here, though. I feel like there's some liberties taken here with the aesthetics and the proportions of this particular Batman figurine that's included. But again, we'll tackle that later when we actually pull him out of the box. But as you get to note right here, I wanted to kind of draw a little bit of attention to the box because I do like the nostalgia kind of embedded into it as far as, like I said, the overall stencil designs and kind of the logos all over the place that Spin Master likes to do. Apart from the fact that, like I said, a good chunk of the back of the box is taken up by legalities and translations with all this mumbo jumbo here down at the bottom, and then nothing really going on here at the bottom. But as you can tell from the lightness of the box, it is empty. And that is what brings us to the Batmobile itself. As you can see, it's about 1.5 feet from the front nose of the car to arguably the very last fin prior to its assembly, because much like some other competitors, you do require just a little bit of assembly pulling it out of the box, very reminiscent of the recent 89 Batwing that I also covered on the channel. So you simply just have to assemble the fins, and it's pretty straightforward and easy. I heard some people say online that once you apply the fins, they're permanent, and for a little while I thought that that was the same case with the Batwing, but I ended up being able to remove them, so we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But once you do add the fins, it does add about 7 or 8 inches to the back half right there. Nevertheless, though, as you can see, it fits rather comfortably inside of the light box without any major discrepancies. It's also pretty light, as you can note from how quickly I was able to put it in view. And from first glance, yes, it is definitively the Batman Forever Batmobile in a much more shrunken down format, and with the aesthetics that are lifted directly from that model that we saw in the movie, as far as the ridges, the little cutouts right here, the aesthetic that Schumacher was going for as far as making the car and even the Batsuit feel alive and alien and organic. And so you see an awful lot of those aesthetics replicated very well as far as what I like to call the gills here on the side cut out, the ribs here at the top, the little cutouts and whatever you want to kind of call this front portion right here, complete with even some gray accents for the plastic here at the front that makes up not only the grille, but also the headlights. Now, as far as that Corvette style, they nailed it as far as the sculpture work happening right here. But because since you're dealing with a product that is at a much more affordable tier of just $20, I do feel a little bit of the flimsiness when it comes to the plastic. And I'm not saying that necessarily as a 100% negative on the figure. I'm simply just making an observation and saying that, yeah, for $20, get ready to, as an adult collector, experience a little bit of what I like to call that collector shock. Like when people go to other countries, they experience culture shock. Ever so often when I pick up a Spin Master vehicle or even a Spin Master figurine, whatever you want to call it, I do experience a little bit of that collector shock myself. Because once you start kind of moving the vehicle about and kind of handling, like I said, parts of the plastic, parts of the main body right here, I'm kind of admiring how well they were able to pick out certain little details that are emulated from that original design. Specifically, like I said, the gills, the cutouts, even the much more accurate color scheme to the translucent plastic underneath with the blue instead of the green. And in my opinion, the parts that I have to really give them a little bit of kudos would have to be like these panels that you have going on here at the back that were on that original model, and even some competitors, like I said, even replicated themselves, complete with the cockpit design with the two windows right here, kind of focused here on the center. Again, these little ribs or ridges, I don't know what you really want to call them, but these portions right here that are kind of stacked on top of each other, kind of like those the shingles on top of the on top of the houses. They're kind of stacked in that exact same kind of pattern, that same format. So I like that those were replicated very well right there. And then, like I said, that Corvette aesthetic is still done very effectively. That then leads us to the fins themselves, which have that nice little curvature right here. But then we get to, again, where a little bit of that collector shock sets in, where you see a little bit of warping on the plastic around the Corvette aesthetic, specifically the ones that are wrapping around the wheels to kind of give it that very, old school Corvette vehicle style, that bullet vehicle style look. So when you get a little closer, you'll see that some of that plastic warping is happening, but that's just come to be expected. It's very difficult to dodge that. Even McFarlane does that with their vehicles. Specifically, the Keaton Batman had an awful lot of that with the matte finish. Didn't really see too much of it with the Forever Batmobile, but I'm pretty sure that if I look, give it a second or third look, another glance, I'll find some. What truly bothers me, and I'm hoping comes across a little better on camera, is the sudden change of tonality between the fins and the body of the vehicle itself. You'll notice that you have a much more smoothed out, matted finish and jet black finish to the vehicle, but then you get to this glossy, much darker black for the fins themselves. And that's considering that I was willing to forgive that this is aiming towards a younger demographic, so they smoothed out an awful lot of the pointy bits from the original Batmobile, and even with some of the lower tier competitors like McFarlane, where you have the much more pointier fins. But then you'll notice that the fins themselves are completely rounded here for safety, except for a little while, even pulling the fins separately out of the box before assembling, I was looking at it and I'm like, all right, the smaller fins here are one thing, the really rounded tip here that's part of the main body is a second thing, but then the main one, I don't know if you can see it within frame, but this massive fin that's part of the main dorsal here at the back, this is way, way too rounded to the point where it looks a little goofy. And to say that a detail on the Schumacher Batmobile is goofy, that's how you know you've gone too far. And even while I'm back here, I do like the turbine that's designed right here, though it could have used a few extra paint decals, and also feels like it's assembled a little strange onto the body, where it's kind of actually a little loose in place. It's not completely like, shaking and rattling or anything like that, but giving it just a few notches right there, you can notice that you can kind of even move it. And at first I thought that maybe that was part of a feature, maybe it extends and kind of shows off a little added detail. No, that's just the way that this entirety, the whole body is really assembled. Like I said, a little bit of that collector shock sets in, especially when you take a look at the wheels themselves. And not only are they all separated, they don't have any proper axles that connect, at least from one side to the next. And I do like that they tried to replicate, like I said, the rims with the bat symbol painted on there in the middle. But if you look a little closely, some of the rims are even kind of loose from the tires themselves. So I'm over here feeling the looseness of the rims, the looseness of the turbine, and a little bit of the hollowness for some of the plastic that I'm like, yeah, I mean, I understand it's a $20 vehicle, but you know what felt even more solid for the same exact price and within the same tier? That '89 Batwing. That felt just a little bit more solid and firm to me. And the Batmobile here, it just has these areas that I think could have felt just a little less cheap. Not super expensive, nothing, too crazy. But then you look off to the side and you have like these tabs that are holding panels in place. You flip it to the underside, and I'll give them credit for detailing even the underside with a little bit of these little aesthetics and these pistons and these pipes to make it look like a working vehicle. But then you also see an awful lot of these tabs that are just fit within each other that, albeit, will probably make it pretty easy to disassemble. So any modders out there, if they want to kind of rig this thing with actual working lights and sounds that were obviously not going to be part of this vehicle at the $20 price point, but I didn't expect them. That was okay. And I will give them some additional credit for sculpting in these little tabs. You'll notice that you have these like circular cutouts with tabs cut across them right here. And the reason for why I give them credit for these is because these were actually put in there to then be retrofitted into the cardboard plate that's inside the box for safekeeping. Instead of using like twist ties or plastic ties that you have to cut, they utilize this mechanism where it's like a little plastic piece that you have to rotate to then pull out, and then that will dislodge it from the cardboard that's inside the box. I thought that was incredibly smart and really advanced, that I'm over here thinking Spin Master's got the IQ game when it comes to packaging their figures or their vehicles. I'm really hoping that the competitors follow suit with this methodology, because I thought it was pretty awesome. But while we're down here, you'll notice that, like I said, you got a little bit of the hollowness around the Corvette pieces of the vehicle that, again, give it that lightweightedness that makes it very easy to transfer and kind of roll around. But again, it leads a little bit to that reaffirmness that you're dealing with the Spin Master vehicle, which takes a little while getting used to. But the only areas that I will criticize is, like I said, a few of the rims coming apart from the main rubber wheels on the inside, the looseness of the turbine, and frankly, I'm gonna have to say it, that cockpit. This canopy right here, not only is there no button to release it, you kind of have to dig in there with your nails. Should you have nails, because on occasion I do, but sometimes I like to trim them. And so should you not have some kind of apparatus, it's actually kind of difficult to get to slide open. You have to slide it across here at the top. My apologies if that kind of nudged the microphone a little bit, but you have to slide open the canopy. It's a little tough. It's a little rigid. It's not the most intuitive thing. And then on top of that, before we get to what's waiting us inside, not only is it difficult to slide back into position, but I honestly kind of hate how the canopy is just sitting there on top. You see how it's kind of elevated and it doesn't flush with the rest of the vehicle. At first, I thought that was a defect on mine. I thought, okay, is there a way to fix that? Is it maybe not pressing back into place all the way across? But no, after reviewing some photos, that's exactly how it's designed to be. In fact, that's even how it's styled and drawn out on the artwork of the box. You legit see this lift on the front of the box itself, on the art. So that leads me to believe that that's really how they designed it, and it kind of bugs me, seeing that we have not only the original model of the vehicle, but even some other toys from either back then to most recently McFarlane, being able to flush the canopy much more fluidly than this. It's just sitting there on top. I don't like how this little lip part of the canopy is lifted, and it's separate from this piece, and it also kind of shows off a little bit of the rail that is pretty in your face here at the top. So yeah, I kind of wish that there was a different approach to this design right here. But once you get the canopy actually opened up, not only do you have the bonus Batman figure that is included here, that I'm just gonna rip the band-aid. I hate. Yeah, maybe there's a reason for why I didn't really grow up with these figures in the 90s, considering that I just don't like this aesthetic. I get it, they're going for a retro vintage approach, trying to harken back to those days and try to get some of those collectors that are now, like myself, in their 30s, want to kind of harp on that nostalgia, but frankly, it just doesn't really work for me. I don't like the exaggerated proportions. You see the massive Rob Liefeld, kind of approach to the chest with the giant proportions, the giant pecs and shoulders, but then the tiny little biceps and arms and the waist, complete with oversized. I don't know what the actual term for this muscle group really is behind the legs, but you see how swollen that is versus the actual design of the thighs and then the legs right there at the bottom. He's even lacking that very enormous gluteus maximus that we got to witness in the original movie when he was suiting up. In its place instead, however, we have a bunch of like techie kind of gears and bolts and pistons there at the back, which I really don't remember him having in the movie, but who knows? The cape was covering it up, so maybe that's where he's got an awful lot of the mechanisms that manipulate his sonar vision that's embedded into his cowl. I would like to kind of have that be my headcanon for the time being. But then from the front, you'll see that, yes, they're trying to emulate that aesthetic from the sonar suit, but there's a couple of problems. Not only does it look, like I said, very cartoonish, you have a very ugly bat symbol just stamped on there that's completely decked out in black, which is completely inaccurate to the sonar suit. You're supposed to have it be more or less the same color as the rest of the suit. And yes, you got the head right there with the exaggerated, though props for them getting the Kilmer likeness as far as the lips. So you do have a little bit of that going on. But then the rest is, of course, following suit with that cartoony style. To me, the main problem is that this is the bonus exclusive figure thrown in with the Batmobile. He did not have the Batmobile when he had the sonar suit. By that point, Riddler, along with Two-Face, ambushed Wayne Manor, destroyed the Batmobile, and he was only operating the Batwing. Why is this the version that's thrown in with the Batmobile? I don't get it. I think it should have been reversed. This should have been the solo release up on the pegs, and then we had the proper yellow bat symbol version, the Panther suit, included with this guy. Apart from that, there's not really much to expect from the little mini figurine. It's your typical Spin Master little figure, 4-inch, with the cape, cloth cape right there that is cut out exactly the same as the others. And then as far as articulation, practically none. It's not really here what you come for. You have the head that's able to rotate 360, and that is it. The arms, I'll give them credit for not only being able to rotate vertically 360, but also have the hinge inside that allows the arms to extend towards the sides and even above the 180-degree angle. But then the legs can simply just move upwards and backwards, although really a full 90-degree angle there on the legs towards the back, so that's appreciated. But that's it. Nothing else. And the reason for why that is because you're technically just supposed to have this Batman figure kind of flexed up like so in this driving position, though I don't know how much driving he's going to be able to do since he's got asymmetric hands with one open and one closed. So I don't know. Again, don't know why they went with certain design decisions as far as the included Batman figure, but putting him in this position makes it actually pretty convenient to slip it into the cockpit, because when you get inside the actual driver's seat, you will see, well, you'll see plenty of room to be able to slide that thing in there. There's quite a bit of real estate and wiggle room, so putting the Batman figure inside and then taking it out is absolutely no problem, so can't complain about that. And the actual, little details that they sculpted and etched in for not only the seat, but also the little details on the dash and things like that, it's what you typically expect out of a $20 vehicle from Spin Master. The only criticism, I gotta be honest, is that wheel. Just a simple little plastic tab there at the front. I feel like they could have done something a little better, something a little bit more pleasing. That's it. That's the only thing that I think that they could have fixed, that they could have changed up and done a little better. But everything else is pretty standard and can't really complain about too much. And even the window, you can kind of see from the inside. So they did a good job of making sure that it's tinted from the outside, but you can still kind of see through inside, even though that frankly doesn't really matter. You're just simply putting a little figurine inside. And as I can kind of demonstrate a little bit here, like I said, it's pretty easy. It's just a matter of kind of coiling the cape, kind of tucking it inside. That's probably the only cumbersome bit is the cape, because since it's cloth, it's going to be a little bit frustrating to kind of get in the way. But as far as like headroom or anything like that, there's typically no problem. You just give it a little bit of wiggle, and there you go. It's already inside. And then next come the frustrating part is simply just closing the cockpit because of, like I said, how tough and kind of rigid it is on its rail, that I just really personally do not like it. But once everything is said and done, that is simply just a bonus for the main course, which is going to be the Batmobile itself. So I can kind of take or leave the little Batman figurine, but as far as $20 is able to throw you, this is arguably not a bad Batmobile. Yeah, I have my criticisms and a little bit of that collector shock kind of sets in, but when everything is said and done, I kind of feel the handleability of it being able to not occupy too much space. So if you want something that is doing the same job as that Batwing from the 89 Batwing that Spin Master released, to have it kind of be propped up on the shelf or mounted or do anything like that, to just have a little bit of Batman Forever representation for the affordability, yeah, Spin Master is not a bad choice. However, if you do have that tax return coming in or some kind of bonus, some expendable cha-ching, that then can net you an additional $80, well, then look what you can get for $80 more. Yeah, I'm actually pretty surprised I was able to cram both into the light box. This guy was going to be no problem, but once we got to what is arguably about twice as big as the Spin Master, you got the McFarlane toys, which at the time of this recording, I don't know if things are going to change later down the line, but for the time being, it is a gold label, it is a McFarlane Toys exclusive, and one thing that bumps it up to an even $100 from 20, an $80 differential, is of course lights, sounds, scale, better sculpting. I mean, objectively, that's just naturally going to happen. You're going to have a much bigger canvas to paint with, so McFarlane's going to be able to sculpt in better details, at least have better proportions within the main body of the figure. The vehicle, as far as, like I said, the ridges, the gills, the little aesthetics that Schumacher was going for. However, that's not to say that Spin Master may have done a couple of things here and there that are arguably a little more accurate than the McFarlane. For example, the headlights are painted on right. You actually have some gray aesthetics that I wish that the original would have, or at least like some translucent plastic accents or pieces here on the headlights. The bat symbol inside of the wheels, despite the wheels themselves being sculpted much better on the McFarlane, the bat symbol I think is a bit more accurate on the Spin Master, not gonna lie. And then speaking of accurate color or accurate details, the approach to the blue tint, though the tint is a little much more saturated, having it be blue to begin with as opposed to the greenish or blue-greenish that we had on the McFarlane is technically much more accurate. There's only one shot where it looked a little green, and that's when he's kind of rappelling down via grapple down to Dr. Chase at the very beginning of the movie. I don't know if it was a cinematography thing or whatever the case was, but for the remainder of the movie, the actual hue that we had going on for the interior lights was predominantly blue. Apart from that, you'll see right here that Spin Master still did not do a bad job as far as, like I said, replicating a majority of the Corvette details, the panels there towards the back. And if I was to give it just one more little point, it would have to be maybe the ratio of fins versus main body. I feel like the fins are much more proportional to the body of the vehicle as opposed to McFarlane. I even mentioned this in my original review, is that the vehicle for McFarlane, I think, kind of overdid it with the fins. Yeah, they're pointier, they're much more aesthetically pleasing, but I do think that they're just a little bit too big to the point where they almost make up half of the whole goddamn thing. Whereas I remember the original vehicle, and even the Spin Master, is probably about a third of the vehicle. So the majority of this whole room space that it's taking, it's actually the main body. So I'll give Spin Master credit on that they were able to proportion it out. And then, of course, even though it's a little bit of unfair comparison, both technically come with figurines, except, of course, another thing that's propelling this guy to $100 is that he comes with a proper 7-inch DC Multiverse figure in the form of Alfred, as opposed to whatever that was included in the cockpit with the Spin Master. But you can see right here that if you don't want to reach the triple digits, you don't care for the lights and sounds that McFarlane did opt in for, that's the mechanism that McFarlane did include with their version because they're dealing with a bigger, like I said, a whole overall bigger scope. So they were able to, rack this up with an actual button that has a spring-loaded canopy. And I wasn't expecting that, but like I said, just a better design to these pieces right here that doesn't let the canopy feel so lifted up from the Spin Master. However, $80 is $80, and considering where we're at right now, economy-wise, I can't, in good conscience, blame anyone for looking at this thing on the shelf and going, you know what? I've been wanting some kind of Batman Forever representation on my shelf. I can't really deck out $80. I have to order it from the McFarlane Toy Store and wait for it to ship. Or you can go to Target, get your groceries, and if you happen to have $20 to spend, this is not a bad pickup. And therefore, I give the Batman Forever Batmobile from Spin Master, along with the little figurine, a 7 out of 10. It's not a bad pickup. I still feel like between the two vehicles that they have out right now, it's the 89 Batwing that I think does it a little bit better for me. But I'm still intrigued to see what they come up with later down the line, as far as the Batman Returns stuff, maybe a proper actual Keaton Batmobile. Hell, I would even throw them the Batman and Robin thing. I'm not expecting lights and sounds, but see what they do with that. Maybe even a non-RC version of the tumbler. Yeah, I gotta be honest. I understand that there's an RC tumbler that's already appearing in some Rosses for discounted prices, and it's not a bad pickup after I saw that price tag and thinking to myself, maybe if I'm ever in one, if I have to look for like a gift for a birthday or something, because that's naturally where I get an awful lot of my gifts when I don't know what to pick out for someone. But while I'm there, maybe I'll scope that RC tumbler from Spin Master, but for the time being, I kind of wish that there was a proper, much more decked out vehicle of the tumbler that's celebrating the 85th, that's part of the 85th anniversary line, as opposed to that RC version. That way they can kind of get away from that gimmick, from that mechanism, and just kind of do what they did with this Batmobile as well as the 89 Batwing in the tumbler aesthetic, maybe even the PVS vehicle that they had, and then of course Robert Pattinson. Although I think they already did Robert Pattinson when that movie was coming out with their original wave that they were doing. So, well, only time will tell, but I'm still intrigued of this demographic, of this approach of affordability that Spin Master is tackling. So this didn't do anything to kind of turn me around. I just hope that they're able to take a few of these criticisms that I had as far as the design of the canopy, the looseness of some of the plastic qualities, and then again, that retro approach to the figurine doesn't necessarily work for every single collector out there. But that's just my take on that. Let me know what your guys' take is down in the comments and what you guys think between these two comparisons right here. Are you guys still Team Spin Master, or are you Team McFarlane as far as getting your Batmobiles, getting these specific representations of whether it be Batman and Robin, Batman Forever, Keaton Batman, whatever the case may be? Which one do you opt in with? Do you think that the price is worth getting for the McFarlane, a little bit kind of approaching that triple-digit mark? Or would you rather just stick with brick and mortar affordability via Spin Master? I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys have to say as far as this debate here down in the comments. And while you guys are down there, hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video, thumbs down if you did not. And as always, stay humble and take care.